Welcome to the Sound of Ideas from IdeaStream Public Media. I'm Stephanie Haney. Thank you for being with us. We all know it's something we should do, but it is easy to put off. For many adults, estate planning, especially writing a will, gets pushed down the to-do list for another month, another year, even another decade. In fact, many people don't start the process until well into their 60s, sometimes after a major health scare or a family change forces the conversation. But taking the time to get your affairs in order earlier can make a meaningful difference, according to experts. It gives you more control over your decisions, your assets, and how you want to care for the people you love after you die. And just as importantly, it can ease the emotional and financial burden often placed on families during an already difficult time. Today, we're breaking down what you need to know about creating a will, what it does, why it matters, and how to get started. Joining us to help guide this conversation, we have Helen Rapp, a staff attorney in the Economic Justice Group at the Legal Aid Society of Cleveland. Helen, thanks for being with us today.
Sure. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
We appreciate it. Now, we can't take your calls today, but we can take your emails and your messages. You can send us a note on email at soi@ideastream.org, or you can message us on Instagram at The Sound of Ideas. Helen, a lot of people assume that wills are only for the wealthy, but why should the average person of average means consider creating a will?
That's a great question. Thanks for asking. Wills are most definitely not only for the wealthy. What a will does is it lets a person document how they want their assets to be distributed when they die, and it lets them put somebody in charge of making sure that happens. That would be the executor. No matter what you have, how much or how little, you should get to decide who's going to get your stuff.
So we know that less than 1 in 3 adults have a will. 30% of adults have a will. So what happens if you die without a will?
Right. We know 2/3 of the people don't have it, and people die all the time. Every state has something called an intestacy law, which describes what will happen if you die without a will. If you die without a will, you're said to die intestate. So in Ohio and in many other states, it's a very logical list. First, we look to see, was the person married? If they have a spouse, that person is going to get sometimes all, but if not all, the bulk of what they have. If there is no spouse, we look to see, did they have children? If they had children, those children will take equal shares of whatever assets there are. If there are no children, but maybe there were children and there are grandchildren, we look down the line. We look for lineal descendants. If the person didn't have a spouse, didn't have children, or any lineal descendants, then we look up. Are there any living parents? If there are no living parents, we look out to the side. Were there siblings? If there are no siblings, did those siblings have children? Are there nieces and nephews? So essentially, we look, very hard to see, are there relatives who can take assets?
And if there are no relatives, then what happens?
So ultimately, after looking under every rock, if there are absolutely no distant relatives, then it would go to the state.
Now, there are a bunch of different hypothetical situations that my mind is racing to. We won't get into all of them, but I'm just thinking as we think about the importance of having a will and spelling all of this out, ancestry testing is so much more common. There could be surprise relatives that you may not know about that could really kind of mess with your plans if you don't have a will in place that is specifically spelling out what you would like.
Yes, that's correct. If you don't have a will and somebody can prove that they are a relative and there's nobody who has a superior claim, then they are likely to be eligible. If you do have a will, you can control that because children do not have an inherent right to inherit. If you have a will, you can cut children out, or you can guard against unknown relatives by saying, I'm specifically leaving my stuff to these people.
To this person by name,
Yes.
if you want to. Now, if someone were to go about the process of creating a will, how long does the process take?
It's actually not that difficult to do. There are certain requirements. In Ohio, a will must be written. It must be signed in the presence of two disinterested witnesses, which means it can't be the people who are your beneficiaries. It can't be the person who is your executor. And that's, pretty much it. It has to be, you have to be an adult. So a 16-year-old can't have a will. You have to be competent. You have to be aware of what you're doing and that this is your will and that nobody's forcing you to do it. But it's really not that difficult to do. The key is it has to be witnessed, and a lot of people miss that, and they'll say, oh, I had my will notarized. That's interesting, but not sufficient, okay? Certainly, if it makes you feel better, you can get it notarized. But if your will has not been witnessed by two disinterested people, it will not be considered valid in Ohio.
Does a notary count as one witness?
Yes, the notary can be a witness.
Okay. And do they have to then notarize and witness it in terms
No.
of different lines on the document?
No, not for a will. Wills are a little bit peculiar. Most people would be, would tell you that legal documents should be notarized. Okay, there's only one state that requires notarization, Louisiana. So in every other state, wills are witnessed.
Okay, so two disinterested people, meaning two people who are not benefiting from that will, have
Not
to
benefiting, and it shouldn't be the executor either.
Okay. We're getting a lot of questions about the difference between trusts and wills. So let's share some of those questions now. Stephen writes in, is a trust an alternative to a will or something to supplement a will?
It's more of a supplement to a will. Okay, a trust is its own legal entity. And lots of times people will think, oh, I need to have a trust. I have heard that a trust can help me have my family avoid probate if I put everything in a trust, which is true. A trust can accomplish the goal of avoiding probate. A trust gives you the flexibility to have even more control than a will. And so you can stipulate, people need to be a certain age, or they're only going to get a certain percentage until they reach a certain age. You have a lot more flexibility to be controlling in a trust than you do in a will. Typically, if somebody comes to a lawyer and they have a trust drawn up for a variety of reasons, they're still going to have a will. The will will be very simple. It'll say, when I die, I leave everything to my trust. Okay. And then all the assets go to the trust, and the trust controls how they're distributed, how and when.
Now, when we talk about probate, can we explain what probate is? And so what happens in the process? Say someone dies with a will, then probate happens. What does that mean?
Okay. Well, if you die with a will, probate may happen. It may not happen. So in general, probably most people would agree it's a good goal to set things up so that when you die, your family does not have to go through probate. Okay, probate is a court process. Every county in Ohio has a probate court. And so if you die and you have probate assets, then your family will have to go through the probate process in order to distribute those probate assets. The probate court will want to have admitted the will so that they can make sure that assets are being distributed correctly. Okay. However, you can avoid probate if you take some upfront steps to make sure that the assets that you have are not probate assets. So what are probate assets?
You are doing my job for me. Thank you, Helen.
Okay.
What are probate assets?
So it's easier to answer that question by saying what is not a probate asset. Anything you own that has a beneficiary on it, or is jointly owned, or is in a trust, those assets are not probate assets. So usually it's easy for people to understand if I say a life insurance policy. Everybody knows you have a beneficiary on a life insurance policy. That is not a probate asset. When you die, the insurance company is going to write a check to the beneficiaries. They're not going to say, what does the will say? They're not going to say, have you gone through probate? They're just going to give the assets to the beneficiary. The good thing in Ohio is we can put beneficiaries on just about everything. We can put it on real estate, so your house doesn't have to go through probate. The BMV has a form that lets you put a beneficiary on a car title, so that doesn't have to go through probate. Every bank in America will let you put a payable on death or transfer on death beneficiary onto a simple savings or checking account. So if you list your assets, think about them, take a few steps, you can usually set your assets up so that they don't have to go through probate.
You were teaching me things today, Ellen. I had no idea that real estate could actually have a beneficiary designated on that.
It's something that we're fortunate that we have in Ohio. Not every state allows this. We have something called a transfer on death designation affidavit. It's a very simple document. It's not a deed. It does not transfer the house while you're living. It simply says, upon my death, if I still own this house, this is who I want it to go to. It can be one person. It can be more than one person. It can be a trust. That document has to get recorded at the county recorder's office. If it doesn't get recorded, it's like it didn't happen. But it's a fabulous tool, and everybody in Ohio who owns a home should have one.
Do you have to file your will anywhere? Does that have to be recorded anywhere in the state of Ohio?
No, you don't have to file it. You can file it at the probate court, and they do charge. It's a minimal charge, but they will store your original will for you. And I think that used to be more popular. It's not really typically done anymore. It's good to do if you anticipate that perhaps your family is going to
challenge it.
And so that can help you protect against it. A downside to doing that is if you have it filed at the court and then you decide a few years down the road that you want to change your will, there's a process to get it out of the court. It's not impossible, so I don't want people to think that it is, but I would say it's not as commonly done as it used to be, and it is not required.
Okay. We have a question from Mark. Mark wants to know, how do you create a living trust on your own? It seems like it's pretty simple to create a will on your own from what we talked about, but what about a living trust?
Yeah, so as a lawyer, I don't recommend that, okay? Trusts are complex, and if they're not done correctly, they may not be considered to be valid. And so if we talk about estate planning and we talk about wills and powers of attorney and trusts, the one that I'm really hesitant to say it's okay to do on your own is a trust. It's expensive sometimes to have a lawyer do a trust for you, so I understand the desire to maybe do it on your own. You just have to really make sure you know what you're doing with a trust. I wouldn't recommend it.
Okay, understood there. Now, we know that you have some resources that you can share with us for people who are interested in drafting a will. So can you tell us what those are?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, as a lawyer, I'm going to recommend that you have a lawyer do it, but I'm also going to tell you I'd rather have you do it yourself than not have one, okay? For people who qualify, Legal Aid, the Legal Aid Society of Cleveland, where I work, we have a wealth building team where we do estate planning and probate work for people. And the great thing, shameless plug for Legal Aid, but the great thing about Legal Aid is that we provide those services to our clients at no cost to them. You have to be eligible. Legal Aid serves people who have low income. But certainly, if you think that you might qualify, call Legal Aid, go through our intake process. You can do it online. If you don't qualify for Legal Aid, but you still want an attorney, the Cleveland Metropolitan Bar Association has a fabulous lawyer referral service. You can call them. They do charge, I think, $25 to match you with an attorney. We're fortunate in Northeast Ohio. We have a lot of really good firms that do estate planning, and so the Cleveland Metropolitan Bar Association can connect you to those people. If you decide, I want to do this on my own because I don't qualify for Legal Aid, but I don't have the money to pay a private attorney, the Ohio State Bar Association has a great website. It's not just for lawyers. They have a lot of really useful information. They have forms that you can download and you can do your own will. You can do your own financial power of attorney. You can do your own healthcare power of attorney. They also have fact sheets on their website that will tell you, what do I need to do if I'm doing these documents on my own? How do they need to be executed? Do they need to be notarized? Do they need to be witnessed? So that's a great resource. Within Cuyahoga County, we're very fortunate. We have a great probate court. Our probate court has a resource center that is specifically for people who do not have an attorney who have to navigate the probate process. You have to have an appointment, but it's free to use. So if you go to the probate court website, you can find the phone number and you can call them up and get an appointment. And the last one that is a really great program for homeowners. The Cuyahoga County Probate Court, in partnership with the Cuyahoga County Fiscal Office, has a program called the Great Estates Program. They will help people who want to do one of these transfer on death designation affidavits so that you can avoid probate and transfer your house when you die.
That is a great tip right there. All great resources. Helen Rapp with the Legal Aid Society of Cleveland, thank you so much for sharing your time with us today.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's been a pleasure.
We appreciate it. We're going to take a quick break now. When we come back, we'll hear about a nonprofit in Akron that's teaching kids how to design and restore shoes while also encouraging conversations about their mental health. This is The Sound of Ideas. I'm Stephanie Haney. We'll be right back in a moment. You're with The Sound of Ideas from IdeaStream Public Media. I'm Stephanie Haney. Thanks for being with us. A nonprofit organization in Akron is hoping to reach young people through sneaker culture, and the effort comes at a critical time. Last summer, a mass shooting at Mason Community Learning Center left more than a dozen young people injured. In response, Akron city leaders committed $100,000 to youth sports and wellness programs and reinvested in other crime-deterring efforts. But how can communities connect with kids before they reach a crisis point? The Akron Sneaker Academy says it's working to address this by using shoes as a gateway to hands-on learning, mentorship, and exposure to science and technology. With me now in studio, we have Dominique Waters, the founder and executive director of Akron Sneaker Academy. Dominique, thanks for being with us today.
I am on fire and excited to be with you today.
I can tell. The energy is palpable. We're excited to talk about all of the good work you're doing. And we also have with us by phone Dr. Michael Radovian, child and adolescent psychiatrist at Akron Children's Hospital. Hi, Dr. Radovian. Thanks for being with us.
Good morning, guys. Thanks for having me.
Now, we can't take your calls, but we can take your thoughts via email or via Instagram message. Now, if you're a parent and you have questions about getting your child engaged in activities outside of school, or maybe you want to open a conversation about their emotional well-being, or maybe you want to share a story of something that worked for you, you can email us at soi@ideastream.org, or you can message us on Instagram at The Sound of Ideas. Dominique, you started the Akron Sneaker Academy a little over 2 years ago. So tell us about the mission and the partnership that you have with Akron Public Schools.
So the mission is very simple. How can we translate the excitement for getting a fresh pair of kicks to education and empowerment for our young people? You know, when I started this mission, I had previously transitioned from working at a sneaker store where I engaged with so many youth on a day-to-day basis and saw how the commodity really got them excited. But then understanding Akron and our ecosystem, us being truly a polymer material science capital from rubber all the way up to polymers, it's like, how can we translate that to our young people? So I started the nonprofit in January 2024. That summer, I had an incredible opportunity to pilot a sneaker camp in partnership with Youth Success Summit in Akron Public Schools, a 3-week camp that we kind of put together, and we saw the response from the community. We saw how engaging the young people were excited about the material, and they designed a sneaker for one of the local sneaker brands, Lucky Shoes, which is Akron-based, and pitched it to the company, actually. So it was like, we got something here with this. So the partnership has been great. We're in our 3rd year of sneaker camp this summer, so I'm rocking and rolling.
Very exciting stuff. Now, you're primarily working with middle schoolers, 6th through 8th grade.
Yes.
Is there a reason you chose to focus on that group?
So through the data, we understand that in Akron specifically, and maybe in communities around our country, middle school is probably the least invested population we have as far as programming. We have a lot for K through 5. We have a lot for the high school kids, but that middle school population gets a little bit overlooked, and it's the most formidable time of their journey. So my program saw that need, and so we wanted to cater to that middle school, because in middle school, this is when you're thinking learning's cool, or science is cool or not, or just being in school, being a good student is cool. So how do we reinforce those behaviors at that formidable age and put them on a track to be successful through high school? So I love my middle schoolers. I think they're critical to our communities.
Dr. Radovian, at what age do you think parents should start actively talking to their kids and teaching them about their feelings?
I think it needs to happen as soon as possible, as soon as the kids are really able to identify what feelings are. I mean, we think back to old school, Sesame Street type programs, trying to teach kids what it's like to feel happy, what it's like to feel sad, what it's like to feel scared. I think that the earlier the better for parents, and really giving them the space to express themselves in an emotional way. And sometimes that might look for parents like naming their emotions for them, especially in those early years. Your 2-year-old is throwing a tantrum. Hey, it looks like you're really mad right now. What is making you so mad? Those kinds of things, to try and give them the words so that they have that sense of control and power over their emotions.
Dr. Radovian, that was a great, helpful piece of advice you just shared there about naming your emotions. What are some other simple ways that adults can start conversations with their children about emotions?
I mean, I think the basic thing that I think pretty much all parents do is just checking in with their kid and how are you? What's going on? How's your day, at the very, very least? But as, I'm sure Dominique can attest to, as kids get into the middle school years, sometimes that turns into an eye roll and, ugh, fine, mom, those kinds of responses. So it's trying to model an open door policy and giving them the space to express themselves as they need to, letting them know that you're there, that you want to know more about their day, you want to know more about their friends, their issues, those types of things. And allowing them that little bit of personal space too, to respect that boundary, to say, hey, I got this, mom. I don't need you to call the school and handle my bullies for me, for example. Giving them that little bit of respect can be really, really helpful.
Sounds like a lot of listening happening, for sure. Now, Dominique, you talked about your 3-week summer camp. That was in July of last year. Tell us a little bit more about how that was received and what you're looking forward to in year 2.
So we are literally creating a problem-based learning model where the students are invited from all over the district to solve a problem with their design. It's not just solving the sneaker. How could it meet the needs? So last summer, we were on the University of Akron's campus, so their sneaker had to cater to college students. So for example, we had to interview college students to see what they need. We took them around the campus to see how much walking it is, so their sneaker had to be comfortable. And then the most exciting part about it is that for our expo, we invite the entire community in to pitch this sneaker concept to the community. And the mayor of Akron, Mayor Malik, came to see. And so once he walked through the door, it got real for the kids. But we had 100% parent participation. Every parent came out. And so that presentational learning, getting our kids to speak about what they're doing, is critical to their development. So year 3, we're looking to do something bigger and better for sure.
And Dr. Radovian, talk to us about the importance of out-of-school activities, sports, arts, clubs, camps like the one that Dominique is running. How can that help children regulate their emotions?
So I think that offering these after-school activities and camps, like Dominique's, it's less about teaching them how to regulate their emotions. That's certainly a portion of it. You want to make sure that they're regulating themselves, they're behaving well, they're doing what they need to do to earn the ability to go to those camps, because I'm sure that there are rules about the camp, the club, the after-school activity. However, I think that it's more important to have them involved in a positive way with their peers and with adult role model type figures. So what we are really looking for is for them to be involved with a trusted adult, someone that they really connect with, that they feel good about seeing, in addition to their parents, and that ability to connect with their peers on a level that is above and beyond just seeing them in the hallway at school. Now, to be fair, not all kids are going to love every extracurricular activity that, is offered at their school. Not every kid is going to be a sports kid or an athlete. So we want to give them that a little bit of leeway and choice. But I do think that it's really helpful for kids to find something that fires them up And that could be school stuff, that could be sports, that could be volunteering, that could be 3D printing on their own in their room, those types of things. Just something to give them a sense of community and a sense of accomplishment.
Dominique, your inspiration for the Sneaker Academy is from a close personal relationship of yours, your brother Douglas. Can you tell us about your brother Douglas and how he helped inspire the Sneaker Academy?
Yeah, so I had founded the Sneaker Academy beginning of January 2024. And like I said, we piloted our camp that summer. But by the end of 2024, my younger brother, who I feel is one of my closest friends growing up, he was murdered in Akron and was a victim of gun violence, very senseless gun violence. So I'm in a moment where I'm building this mission, inspiring young people, and then suffering personal loss. But it was also a moment of personal activation for me. My younger brother was so brilliant with kids. I think I'm pretty good, but he had a way to relate to them and make learning fun. He would always quiz them on their homework and do flashcards with them and do recreational activities with them. And I carry that spirit into this second iteration of our programming, how we're going to address things like gun violence in a culturally relevant way. So he's a huge inspiration for me.
And something like sneakers can seem lighthearted, Dominique, but having a clean, restored pair of fresh shoes, what does that mean for some of the students that you're working with?
So I think it means everything, because I can remember being an inner city kid from Akron. My favorite shoe was that Nike Air Force One, the all white. And every day after school, I would get the toothbrush out and I would get it with some soap and I would scrub it clean because I wanted it to be pristine. For our kids today, when you come from communities maybe that are under-resourced, sneakers is a form of inspiration, a form of identity. So when you get that fresh pair of kicks, not only is it like a spiritual experience, but it sets them on a track that they can go to school and learn and think and be a part of the culture. And I think academically, they can excel as well if they feel great. So it's more than just a commodity. It's the foundation of their success.
And sometimes you don't know what's going to hit with a young person, what's going to make that connection. You've found a great way of doing that through sneakers. Dr. Radovian, I want to ask you, what are some ways that we can know that a child might be struggling emotionally? Some warning signs.
Yeah, so I think that one of the big ones that we see is just a sense of isolation and a sense of withdrawal, especially in that middle school age range. We see kids who tend to pull away from their peers. They're not as engaged with their friends. They're kind of falling by the wayside there. Now, for some kids, that could look a little bit different because there are definitely some kids for whom most of their interaction with their friends is via phone. So a parent might look at them and say, well, they're spending all their time in their room. They're just staring at their phone. But really, they're engaged in 4 different group chats on Discord and Snapchat and Instagram and all of these things. So we have to be a little bit mindful there. But I think that one of the big things is if a kid is involved in an extracurricular activity and suddenly just doesn't really want to do it anymore, or they're starting to act out in school in ways that they never really have before. Suddenly they're getting into fights when they've always been a really solid behaviored student. Those types of things that are just out of character for this kid are some of the things that a parent might want to look at and say, what's going on with my child?
Dr. Radovian, if we do see a situation where a child is lashing out violently, is there anything that we can know about that kind of behavior, about what's lying underneath that?
I'm going to give you a very psychiatry answer and say it depends. It really does depend on what's going on, because I think that I could tell you a million different stories as to why a kid might lash out in violence. And there's also different levels of violence, of course. We have a typical, quote unquote, a schoolyard fight. People getting into an argument at school, at recess, over something dumb. And they get physical about it because tempers flare and they escalate and they go that route. That is vastly different than the tragedy that occurred at Mason, or those types of things. So I think that we really need to kind of have that open conversation with the kid to determine where they're at in terms of their emotions. So if a kid is getting bullied and pushed to the limit and then they finally snap and punch the bully in the mouth, that's one thing. But if they are plotting, planning, really trying to have something bigger go down, then that's a completely different story.
And Dr. Radovian, on the flip side of that, if there is a violent behavior, that doesn't always mean there's something serious underlying with a mental health issue. Is that right?
Absolutely. Oftentimes, those with really severe and persistent mental health problems are those who are victims of violent crimes as opposed to perpetrators. Now, for sure, there can be a correlation between mental health struggles and violence, but it's very, very minimal. More often than not, what we would see with a kid is that they feel anxious or they feel stressed or they feel depressed. And that then gets transitioned into irritability, especially for young boys, because, this may shock you, but boys are not supposed to be sad. They're supposed to be angry and tough and all of those sorts of fun things that society tells us. So they end up lashing out as opposed to going to a trusted adult and saying, hey, I feel really crappy and I need some help. So we see that a lot with these kids. It doesn't necessarily mean that they are depressed or that they're anxious or that anything is going on, but it's a sign for us to maybe check in with them and say, hey, what's the deal here?
If you're just joining us here on The Sound of Ideas, we are talking about an out-of-school activity, a group called the Akron Sneaker Academy, and how that's providing an outlet for young people in the Akron area. And it's being used as a space to really help reach children before they reach a point of crisis. We have a child psychologist with us as well, as along with the founder of the Akron Sneaker Academy with us. So if you have a comment or a question, you can send us an email at soi@ideastream.org. You can also send us a message on Instagram at The Sound of Ideas. Now, Dominique, with your program, the Akron Sneaker Academy, how does your program help curb gun violence and some of the other challenges facing young people?
I think the biggest, couple things that we do, we operate in that out of school time, which we have learned that 75 to 80% of students' time is spent out of school, whether it's summer breaks, after school. So how do we engage to keep them busy and active? But I think the biggest thing with Akron Sneaker Academy is our framing. We approach our young people with the brilliance and talent that exists inside of them versus what we see a lot of communities with the deficit thinking of they're at risk or they're high risk. We say, no, you're talented, you're brilliant. We just need to start to alleviate some of those barriers. So when a kid walks into a space and they're welcomed and they feel that they are a part of it and they're included, now we can build from that place of strength. And I think Akron Sneaker Academy does a great job with that.
And Dr. Radovian, in your experience, are parents typically aware if there's something going on with their child, like maybe their child is being bullied, or are families kind of finding out once children reach that crisis point?
Again, it very much depends. I think that there are definitely some families who are extremely aware. And, like I kind of had mentioned earlier, there's some parents who are actively advocating for their kids to the school, whether their kid wants them to or not. And then on the flip side, there are definitely some kids for whom the parent doesn't find out that anything is amiss until they're sitting in the ER and the kid has expressed suicidal thoughts or self-harm or something along those lines. And the parent is shocked to find out what the kid has more or less been hiding. And there's all kinds of different reasons that a kid might not want to talk to their parents about what's going on. Some of them don't want their parents to worry. Some of them don't want their parents to think of them in a different way, all kinds of different things. But it all does go back to that importance of communication and trying to model that openness with your kids.
Dominique, I want to ask a little bit about what you're seeing in the Akron space. We know that Akron Superintendent Mary Owley, in the State of the Schools address last week, talked about early literacy scores, low scores, and chronic absenteeism across the district. Is that something that you're seeing with students who are either participating or you hope will participate in the Akron Sneaker Academy?
Yeah, I thought Superintendent Otley had a wonderful, honest, and genuine State of the Union address. And I think the in-school experience has its own challenges, but in the out-of-school time, because we're able to be more flexible and cater the experience around the students' needs. For example, our summer camp last year had 85% attendance over 3 weeks. So that is a testament to engagement, to how we structure the camp, and to how we center the student experience first. And then the academia is kind of like secondary with like a balance of in-school and out-of-school learning. So yeah, we're rocking it. We have the highest attendance in the district. So how do we find more ways to incorporate in-school and out-of-school learning together? Because kids need both of that. They need fun and they need academia together.
Let's talk about the out-of-school program, your summer camp, okay? Will that be in July again this year?
Yes, it will be July, from July 6th through the 24th. We are back at the University of Akron. We're looking to go from 30 kids to 50 kids this summer, so keep us in your thoughts. But we're really going to try to cater it around Goodyear's history, because in Akron, Goodyear created the rubber sole. So how can we partner with people like Goodyear to expose our young people to the foundation of our history? So we're going to take them to the Apple Store for a digital experience. We're going to take them to the art school. We're going to have volunteers around to mentor and coach them. So we're going to do it bigger and better, and we hope to have people come out and see what they learn at the end of camp.
It sounds very exciting. How do people register if they want to be a part of it?
So registration will go live hopefully first week of April. It will be directly through the APS website for APS students, but you can
Akron Public Schools
Akron
website?
Public Schools, absolutely. But you can email us at info@akronsneakeracademy.org if you're outside of the APS district to sign up, because we look to expand to Summit County, even greater Akron as well.
Okay. And that email, info@akronsneakeracademy.org.
Absolutely.
I want to ask you a bit about some of the other activities that you have planned outside of the summer camp. What do you
Absolutely.
have in the works, and what are you hoping to get to?
So we are on a mission because we're expanding our programming. We're launching the Saving Souls initiative that's tying sneaker restoration to youth violence prevention. That's going to be piloted with 50 fourth and fifth graders this spring. We're also doing pop-ins with Goodyear for their STEM day. We're going to be working with Girl Scouts here at their STEM center in Cleveland. So we are on a mission to really try to find ways to do year-round engagement, building off from our summer camp. And then ultimately, we're looking for a site too. So maybe when we get our site, we can do more deeper and more robust programming, hopefully downtown Akron.
Okay, we did get a question in from one of our producers here
Awesome.
at Idea Stream, JC. Now, I'm in the studio with Dominique, and I am looking at some fine fashion here. JC wants to know, what's your style? What kind of things do you like to wear? Sneaker, very fashion forward. What's your vibe?
So I worked a lot, over 10 years in fashion, worked most of that in New York City, working for Burberry and Louis Vuitton. So there was a season in my life where I was just suited and booted every single day. Now that I'm home, I love to just be comfortable. I always have a pair of sneaker on, and I have more of a smart casual look. I wear a t-shirt with the blazer because I'm in meetings and I'm running around with kids. But in summertime, I'm in shorts and t-shirt because the kids get me all riled up. But I think fashion is evolving, but I go for more comfort and functionality now.
That's the nice thing about a sneaker. A sneaker is flexible.
You could do a lot with it, and I think it's more acceptable too. Back 10 years ago, you couldn't wear a sneaker with suits, but now you see a lot of our corporate people, throwing on a nice pair of sneakers as well.
I'll tell you what, the young people have it. Sneakers, comfortable shoes, something that looks good, you feel good in. That is the way.
Yes.
All right, I want to thank our panel guests for our conversation today. In studio with me, Dominique Waters, founder and executive director of the Akron Sneaker Academy. Thanks for the time, Dominique.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for your time.
Also on the phone with us, Dr. Michael Radovian, child and adolescent psychiatrist with Akron Children's Hospital. Dr. Radovian, thank you for the time.
Absolutely, guys. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. You as well. And that does wrap up our show for today. If you missed any part of today's show, you can listen to the Sound of Ideas podcast, or you can watch the show on the Idea Stream Public Media YouTube page. If you do that, you can check out Dominique's fashion today. You can also hear a rebroadcast tonight at 9 on 89.7 WKSU. To get the last word on today's topics, you can email us at soi@ideastream.org, and you can find us on Instagram at The Sound of Ideas. Now, yesterday we talked about community conversation groups dealing with difficult and divisive topics led by churches in both Canton and Cleveland. Timothy DM'd us on Instagram and wrote, "I love what Courageous Conversations on Race Relations is doing locally in Canton." Asks a question. Do you feel like it's mostly religious people from the community? Timothy says, I am an atheist who cares deeply about these issues, but oftentimes struggle to engage meaningfully with religious people. Timothy, thank you for writing in and sharing your perspective with us. Now, tomorrow on The Sound of Ideas, we'll talk about the role of protein in our health and why it's become such a major focus in today's food and wellness trends. Then we'll bring you a new installment of The Menu, and we'll take you to Geauga County, where preparations are underway for the 100th annual Maple Festival that's happening this spring. I'm Stephanie Haney. Thank you for keeping the conversation going. We'll see you back here tomorrow on The Sound of Ideas.